This week, the campaign group Enough is Enough held an enormous rally in Manchester. Speakers included union leaders Dave Ward and Joe Grady and Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham. But perhaps the standout intervention came from a dinner lady speaking to Politics Joe.
I'm a dinner lady in Lancashire, and just before the summer holidays, when the cost of living crisis really started kicking off, I've just noticed I spend as much time taking food away from children as I do serving it. And to be honest, it's not what I took the job for. You know, I never dreamt that I'd be having to tell children, you can't have that, you've no money on your account. And it used to be, you know, when I first started a year ago, okay, once a month, there might, you know, parents forget to put money on at the beginning of the month. And you get that. But now you're talking 10 to 15 children a shift every day, every single day. And I'm saying, you can't have that. There's no money, you know. And it's breaking my heart. You know, you see them, they're in a queue full of all their peers and other school children. And it's humiliating for them. It's so humiliating. They just look at you like, well, what am I going to eat? And it's like, I can't give you anything. I'm sorry, you know. And I'm just dreading going back to work. I'm dreading October. And to be honest, it's getting to the point where I'm just like, I don't even think I can do this job anymore. I didn't take the job on to starve children. I'm sorry. It's just, you know, it's just something has to give. And I just don't think it should be children's spirits. You know, I'm sorry,
That clip has really clearly struck a nerve. It's been, I think, viewed 3 million times on Twitter. I mean, Dahlia, what can you say after watching that? I mean, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, it's just awful. And I think what I found really surprising there actually was how much she said it's changed in the past year. You know, we often think about, okay, Tory austerity is this thing that's been going on for 10 years, for 15 years. And I think it was already so bad, but the fact that it's gotten worse by such an intensity in the past year is really something. I've always said that there's a real cowardice to austerity politics, because let's not forget, I think thinking of austerity as this thing that only happened for this decade in British economic history is kind of a misnomer. Like, austerity is very much part of neoliberalism. I would say it's been the kind of governing principle pretty much since Thatcherism. And there's a real cowardice to that economic system, because the people who make the decisions, like the architects of that system, whether it's, you know, Margaret Thatcher or George Osborne or Rishi Sunak, they aren't the ones that actually have to look people in the eye on the front lines and deliver them the consequences of those policies. They aren't the GP receptionists or the GP doctors having to tell people that, you know, they can't get an appointment for like several weeks. They aren't the administrators of universal credit who have to tell people that their social security is being cut. They aren't, you know, the workers like the one that we just heard from having to tell hungry children in front of their classmates that they don't have enough money to buy lunch that day. That's left to ordinary people, that work, and often women. Actually, I think it's the people who occupy that role tend to be women, and we are the ones that have to represent that incredibly cruel system to the people in our communities, and to not only have to face the trauma and the harm of being denied essential services, but also the trauma of having to be the ones to deny those essential services, even though we aren't the ones that made the decision to do so. You know, I remember being at a contraception clinic a few years ago, and I saw this sign by reception saying, you know, basically something along the lines of, austerity has meant that we can't provide the service that we want to provide to everyone and that needs it. Please don't take this out on our staff who are trying as hard as they can with the resources that we have. And the implication there was basically that staff have experienced abuse from patients who are desperate and scared and heartbroken and are reacting in ways that you can expect that someone would react when they are afraid for their health and are being denied the care that they need. And they don't have anyone to hold accountable. There's no system of accountability to the people who actually made the decision to create that system, and no way to appeal to them. And so, yeah, they take it out on the person who's in front of them. And so it always really angers me when people like Rishi Sunak and George Osborne and whatever do this sort of macho talk about how like the decision to cut services is so tough, and they're such a tough and strong leader, and because they've taken that tough decision. There's nothing tough about making that abstract decision when it's not going to affect anyone in your community, and you're not going to have to actually deliver it to people on the front lines. Like, you wouldn't last 5 minutes on the front line of public services. Yes, we know the cruelty and the catastrophe of an economic system that is fundamentally based in austerity and shrinking the ability of us to publicly own our essential services and for everyone's needs to be met. It's not only cruel and catastrophic, it's like fundamentally deeply cowardly. And it just makes me feel so disgusted at the architects of that system.
I mean, I have the same thing whenever I call my GP. It's always, you've got this recorded message. We're under a lot of pressure at the moment. We're really struggling to see everyone. Please don't be abusive to our staff. Obviously, there is never any excuse to be abusive to any staff, wherever they work, public services or whatever. But clearly the reason they're saying that is because the poor service they've been forced to give, because their money has been cut to the bone over the past 12 years, means that some people probably are lashing out because they're in desperate situations. If you're very worried about your health and it's very difficult to get a GP appointment, that doesn't justify, obviously, being horrible to a receptionist at a GP clinic, but it's not surprising that it's happening more often. And it's just, you're right, the cowardly decisions that are made in Westminster are severely damaging the life chances of vulnerable people, and also making the lives of public service workers unlivable because they can't do what they want to be doing, which is helping people. And related to this story, another recent development, bit of news: the increase in kids struggling to afford school dinners goes hand in hand with food banks struggling to meet increased demand. Organisations representing 169 food banks have told The Guardian that the number of people seeking emergency help has grown dramatically in the last few weeks. This was all while donations have shrunk. So The Guardian report that of the 169 providers, nearly 70% said they may need to turn people away or shrink the size of emergency rations this winter. Almost 3/4 said food donation levels had dropped since April, despite the spiralling demand. The Guardian also report that volunteers in food banks are facing the same emotional challenges described by the dinner lady in that clip. Sonia Antoniou-Palmont runs the London-based charity Olive Branch Aid. She told the paper this: like many organisations, we know that the coming months as winter begins to bite will be the hardest one yet for many. We also know that our volunteers will find it difficult, as we will only have resources to be able to help a fraction of the people we are expecting to see in difficulties this winter. So another example of exactly what we're talking about. The consequences of austerity, terrible for people who relied on those public services, also terrible for people who are providing those public services because they can't do what they want to do, which is offer a good service to everyone who needs it. And because of decisions made by Tory cabinet ministers who've never worked in jobs like this, who've never struggled in their lives, they are going to have to go through that really horrible situation of saying no to people who they do not want to say no to, people who should not be told no when they're asking for support because they genuinely need support, but we have stripped the state back to such a degree that people can't get the help they need. All decisions made by people who are extraordinarily rich, who have never struggled in their lives.